still wasting time with books. My brother scoffed during our parents' anniversary. I'm a C. I just smiled. The next morning, when the headlines revealed who had acquired his company, at 34, I was the head librarian at the City Central Library, a job that made my old money family shudder. My name is Eleanor Hayes, but my brother preferred the family disappointment. They were unaware of the fact that my life among books was only half the narrative, which I had meticulously concealed for years. I stood up to my full height and reassured him, I'll be there. He was taller than me, even in heels, and I'll wear clothes that fit. Make sure you do. He straightened his just-acquired Rolex, which he continued to show off. This is a significant evening. I have some exciting news to share. Oh, I lifted one eyebrow. His smile got bigger. This year, I purchased my third business. Officially, Morgan Industries is now a conglomerate. Dad will be quite proud. I nodded while maintaining a neutral look. Drew didn't say anything if he saw my hands getting a little tighter. That's fantastic, I remarked. Congratulations. He made no effort to sound sincere when he said, thanks. You still have time to enter the real world, you know? I need someone to oversee our company library. At least then, you would be putting all of that knowledge to good use. His use of the word knowledge gave the impression that it was an illness. I grinned as I recalled the meetings I had been attending under a false identity and the encrypted laptop in my office safe. I'm content where I am, I informed him. He turned aside with a shrug. Your loss. Recall that it is precisely 7 o'clock. Additionally, Eleanor, he stopped at the door. And Sarah, make sure everything is ready for the announcement, I said. Done already. She said, the press release is ready to go, then paused. Are you certain of the time? I remembered Drew's arrogant expression, years of disdain and condescension. Yes, I said. I'm positive. It will be ideal tomorrow morning. After hanging up, I reclined in my chair and gazed at the empire I had secretly established. Despite having a similar name, Morgan Global Partners had nothing to do with my brother's Morgan Industries, but it was now one of the biggest private equity firms globally. We worked completely in the background, concealing our actual size using covert investments and dummy corporations. I had been building my business for 7 years, while pretending to be a regular librarian. The position wasn't a front. I truly loved books, loved keeping information alive and making it available to others. However, it also served as the ideal disguise for my other life. Who would have guessed that the reserved librarian was among the most influential figures in world finance? Mom sent me a text and my phone buzzed. Remember to do something with your hair, my love. Tonight, the Prescotts will be present. The Prescotts. My parents always tried to impress this old money family. I replied with a straightforward, okay, via SMS and started getting ready for the day. In addition to a fitting for the dress I had purchased, especially for tonight, I already had a hair appointment set. I could play the part when called upon, even if I didn't show off my money. The benefit of owning the facility and having a regular private appointment was that the salon was vacant when I got there. My longtime hairdresser, Maria, who was among the few who were aware of my secret, was waiting. The typical, she pointed to a chair and asked, Today, something a little more formal, I remarked. Family gathering. She gave a knowing nod. Ah, the well-known Morgan anniversary celebration. Earlier, your brother was in, discussing it with everybody who would listen. He definitely was. I used a secure phone to check my emails while Maria worked. The acquisition of Nakamura was going well. One of the biggest electronics firms in Asia, which my brother had been attempting to purchase for months, will be owned by Morgan Global Partners by this time tomorrow. Maria, as though she could read my mind, added, Your brother mentioned he's buying some big company. It was something I couldn't quit boasting about. I grinned. He's attempting to purchase it. There is a distinction. I noticed her in the mirror. You didn't. To put it mildly, the papers tomorrow will be fascinating. At home, 3 hours later, I stood in front of my mirror and looked at my change. The straightforward librarian had vanished, to be replaced by a woman capable of competing at any social gathering. The dress, a deep blue Valentino that I had meticulously tailored, was sophisticated without becoming ostentatious. I wore simple but pricey jewelry, the sort of things that old money liked. Above all, I appeared to be just what my family had anticipated, their bookish daughter trying to blend in. Another text message buzzed through my phone, this one from Sarah. For tomorrow, everything is prepared. Do you really want to keep it a secret from them tonight? No. Give them permission to celebrate. It won't be long before tomorrow. When I got there, the Morgan family estate was decked out like a Christmas tree. The circular driveway was lined with cars, most of which I knew. The same families that had been a part of our social circle for centuries owned Bentleys and Rolls-Royces. As I parked my small Audi, another well-chosen prop, a valet showed up. The car wasn't so nice as to cast doubt on a librarian's pay, but it was nice enough to keep my parents from being embarrassed. Jenkins, our family's long-standing butler, welcomed me at the entrance with the words, "Miss Morgan. The main hall is where your parents are." Before I even saw the party, I could hear it. The soft notes of a string quartet, the clink of pricey glassware, the murmur of elegant conversation. I had made the decision to distance myself from my parents' world, at least in public. My mother's voice echoed across the hallway. "Eleanor, sweetheart, you look presentable." It was great praise from her. Even though Elizabeth Morgan had never really forgiven me for prioritizing books above business, I had at least tried to look presentable tonight. I gave her a cheek kiss and murmured, "Happy anniversary, Mom. You look stunning." She did. She was still the pinnacle of elegance and sophistication at 60. Her friends used to joke that she had struck a bargain with the devil to keep looking young. She was already looking around the room for more significant visitors when she said, "Your father is by the fireplace." Before hiding in the library, do say hello. I navigated the crowd, taking air kisses and courteous questions about my menial position at the library. The majority of these individuals had known me since they were young and had seen me grow up with their own kids. They didn't comprehend my decisions. "My girl is there." As I got closer, Dad's voice roared. His typical entourage, which included business associates and golf companions who had been in his life for decades, was present at the court. "Come on over and show them who you are." Observing the faint slur in his words, I yielded to his eager embrace. He had, as usual, begun the festivities early. "Are you still using those books?" Harold Prescott inquired, clearly expressing his opinion of such a profession in his tone. I affirmed, "I'm still working with those books." Knowledge must be preserved for the next generation by someone. The indulgent chuckle of individuals making fun of what they perceived as a harmless peculiarity was what they laughed at. Dad happily remarked, "Talking about the next generation, where is your brother? He has some important news to deliver." Drew showed up with champagne in hand, as if on cue. He was wearing an even more costly suit, and as he motioned, his Rolex glinted in the light. His voice echoed across the hall as he yelled, "I want to make an announcement, everyone." All eyes turned to him as the room fell silent. Drew had always thrived on being the center of attention and lived for occasions like this. Playing to his audience, he started, "As some of you know, Morgan Industries has been growing rapidly this year. I'm pleased to say that we're about to make our largest acquisition to yet. We will be the owners of Nakamura Tech by this time next week." Applause broke out in the room. Dad grinned proudly. Mom used a monogrammed handkerchief to wipe at her eyes. I waited while sipping my champagne. "Obviously," Drew went on, "the agreement isn't complete yet. But according to my sources, it will happen eventually. The documents are prepared for signature." "That's fantastic, son," said Dad. "I always knew you had what it took to be a true businessman, like your grandfather." Receiving congrats from everyone, Drew reveled in the accolades. At last, he looked at me. "What are your thoughts, younger sister?" His tone was brimming with disdain as he questioned, "Are you prepared to acknowledge that you made a mistake?" Calmly, I looked into his eyes. "I believe," I added cautiously, "that you should not get ahead of yourself." Others joined in his laughter. "Jules, you're always so careful. Because of this, you will always be what you are, hiding in your library, while the rest of us establish empires." "Maybe," I said amiably, "but at least I know how important due diligence is." He narrowed his gaze a little. When I used large words, Drew had never liked it because he thought it challenged his intelligence. With due attention, he sneered, "I have the top attorneys in the industry. Everything has been resolved." I simply lifted my glass and grinned. "I suppose you'll find out who won tomorrow." He saw something in my tone and scowled, but Mom was summoning everyone to dinner before he could ask any more questions. With its shimmering wood, antique china, and crystal that had been in the family for centuries, the dining room was a masterwork of old-world grandeur. I sat down, as I was supposed to, observing with glee that I had been seated far from any significant visitors at the far end of the table. While the first meal was being served, Drew presided over the gathering from his spot next to Dad, entertaining everyone with stories of his financial acumen. I remained silent, answering courteously when someone spoke to me, but generally concentrated on my meal. From next to me, Mrs. Prescott remarked in a low voice, "I just don't understand. In school, you were always so intelligent. You had a lot of options. Why waste time reading books?" I thought about how to respond. Everything will change in 12 hours, but for the time being, I had a part to perform. Simply put, books are never a waste. They teach us that not everything is as it seems. She shook her head, obviously dissatisfied with my answer. "Well, your brother is at least keeping the family name intact, but it must be difficult, seeing him thrive while you—" She smiled empathetically and drifted off. "It's not as difficult as you may believe." Subtle jabs and backhanded praise filled the remainder of the meal. Over the years, I'd learned to let it go like water since I was accustomed to it. Drew got back up and demanded attention as dessert was being delivered. With his glass raised, he declared, "I would like to propose a toast to Mom and Dad, who showed me what success looks like and taught me everything I know about business." He stopped, looking into my eyes. "Additionally, to my sister, who then can demonstrate that not everyone is suited for the family business." The room gave a courteous laugh. Along with the others, I raised my glass as I considered the paperwork that needed to be signed and the press release that was planned for the morning. Loving the celebration. Later, Drew cornered me behind the dessert table and asked, "It's beautiful," I said. "Mom and Dad must be really pleased." "They are." He smugly fixed his tie. "However, it would have been good if both of their kids had accomplished something." I picked out a chocolate truffle and gave it a close inspection. "You understand, Drew, that creating the most noise isn't always the key to success." He gave a snort. "No. Inform my bank account about that. In any case, how much does a librarian make nowadays?" I answered, looking down at my Louboutins, another well-chosen component of my outfit. "Enough to buy those shoes." Drew took a big swallow of his champagne and said, "I'm good with money, right? Well, this has been fun, but I should mingle. Big day tomorrow, after all. That Nakamura deal isn't going to close itself." I took out my phone and quickly texted Sarah as he was leaving. "Is everything prepared for the morning?" She responded right away. "Everything is ready. At 9 a.m., the press release is distributed. Sharp. Do you want the final numbers sent to you?" "No need," I said. "Together with everyone else, I'll see them in the papers." It was approximately midnight when the party started to wind down. As I said them farewell, I took one final round of patronizing remarks regarding my professional decisions. Mom added, "You really should consider Drew's offer," while I planted a kiss on her cheek. "A corporate library would be so much more appropriate." "I'll think about it," I said, knowing that I wouldn't wink. I reflected on how different tomorrow will be as I drove home. I had kept up my cover for 7 years, establishing my empire behind closed doors while my family disregarded me as the unsatisfactory daughter who had put her love of books ahead of her career. They will discover how mistaken they had been tomorrow. I got to the library at exactly 8 the following morning, as I had done every day for the previous 7 years. As I walked to my office, my sensible shoes reverberated through the marble corridors, and I nodded to the early morning regulars who never asked why the head librarian had such rigid hours. Sarah was holding her iPad while she waited for me. She did a fantastic job as my assistant librarian in the library. She was the COO of Morgan Global Partners outside of these doors, and I had never encountered a more astute businesswoman. As we walked inside my office, she murmured softly, "Everything's ready." In Tokyo, the attorneys are congregating. In 45 minutes, a press release will be distributed. After putting my luggage down, I turned on my safe laptop. Any updates from Drew's group? The Nakamura deal is still anticipated to be finalized this morning. The attorneys for your brother are currently settling into their offices. I grinned, picturing Drew's expression as he understood what was going to happen. Let's give them hope for a few more minutes. My private line rang at exactly 8:55. The translator for Mr. Nakamura stated, "Miss Morgan, everyone is in position." Great, let's move forward. A flurry of confirmations and signatures filled the next few minutes. Nakamura Tech, together with its subsidiaries, patents, and cutting-edge technology section, was formally bought by Morgan Global Partners by 9 a.m. Sarah declared, "A press release is being sent out right now." Several news websites appeared on my screen, and I watched as the story spread across several platforms at once. Breaking, Nakamura Tech is purchased by a mystery buyer. Global financial powerhouse, Morgan Global Partners identifies founder. When a library sciences expert was named a business mogul, Wall Street was stunned. My phone began buzzing right away. Naturally, Drew was the first to call. "What on earth is this?" Without introducing himself, he demanded. "A sick joke." Calmly, I said, "Good morning to you too, brother. I assume you've watched the news." "It's not possible," he said. "That's not Morgan Global Partners. You are not the CEO and founder." "I am, in fact," I said. "It has now been 7 years." "I can see why you're confused," I said. "I'm just a librarian, after all." The sound of papers being rapidly shuffled was the only sound to break the long silence. Drew stumbled and said, But I had a deal. The documentation was prepared." "Was it?" I asked naively. "You should review the fine print. For months, Nakamura Tech has been active. We've simply been holding off on making a decision till the ideal time." "We," he said, his voice breaking. "Who are we?" "My group, my business, Mimber." I took a moment to process each word. "You know, the one I constructed while you were busy making fun of my professional decisions." The line died. I glanced at Sarah, who was making an ineffective effort to hide her smile. "When are my parents going to call?" She looked at her watch. "I grant it, 2-3. My mother's number appeared on the screen just as it should have. Morgan Eleanor Elizabeth. Her voice was so high-pitched that it might shatter glass. "What did you do?" "Good morning, Mom. I'm a little busy right now. Maybe we should have supper to talk about this." "Supper? Are you aware of what's going on? Your dad's phone is ringing nonstop. They're the Prescotts. It's the club calling. Our librarian daughter covertly established a multi-billion-dollar firm, and everyone wants to know." In the distance, I could hear Dad attempting, and seemingly failing, to sound calm. "Tell her to come over here immediately," he yelled. Sincerely, I stated, "I have meetings all day." Nakamura Tech's acquisition was only the first step. However, I would be delighted to have everyone around for supper. At my house. Let's say 7 o'clock. "Your location?" Mom said in a suspicious tone. "Are you referring to the tiny apartment next to the library?" "No. I refer to my Highland Avenue penthouse. I'll text the address to you." A long pause ensued. Highland Avenue. However, that building is the most costly in the city. Is it? I said. I was unaware of it. Mom, I'll see you at 7. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. Finally, 7 years of secrets were being revealed. After 7 years of meticulous preparation, I managed to keep my cover while creating something truly remarkable. Are you all set for phase 2? Sarah inquired. I gave a nod. Display the second news release. Compared to the first, this one was even larger. Morgan Global Partners announces a $50 billion merger with East Asian IT giants. Although the merger had been planned for months, we timed it to coincide with the acquisition of Nakamura. The business world would be in shock over two of the decade's biggest deals by the time my family got there for dinner, both of which were arranged by the quiet librarian they had long disregarded. The remainder of the day was spent in a meticulously planned dance of strategic planning, interviews, and meetings. In just one interview, I told the Wall Street Journal how my library science training had been ideal for creating a multinational conglomerate. I informed the reporter, power comes from information, and a librarian is the best person to comprehend the importance of information. I left the library at 6:30 and made my way to my actual workplace, which was on the top floor of the building on Highland Avenue that had been. The entire top floor of the penthouse has been my home for the last 5 years. This was where I really resided, even though I had kept up a modest flat close to the library for aesthetic reasons. My actual home office, which dwarfed Drew's corporate offices, was right in the entryway, where my private elevator entered. Modern technology enabled me to run my empire from anywhere in the world, while floor-to-ceiling windows provided a panoramic view of the sea. It was a sleek, silent, and unquestionably powerful room. Sarah had made arrangements for the most upscale restaurant in the city, which is also privately owned by Morgan Global Partners, to cater the meal. Fine china, crystal glasses, and candles flickering against linen napkins gave the dining room table a subtle elegance that only the wealthy could appreciate. The elevator sounded at exactly 7 o'clock, signaling the arrival of my family. Drew went in first, his swagger gone, his anger barely contained. Both parents, who were completely shell-shocked, followed. Jenkins, who had insisted on going with them, appeared unable to comprehend how the family's poor relation had become one of the wealthiest citizens of the city. I pointed to the breathtaking vista and remarked, "Welcome to my home." "Drink." "How much time?" Drew insisted. "For what duration have you been deceiving us?" "Are you lying?" I poured myself a scotch after moving to the bar. "I never made any false statements. I work as a librarian. Yes, I adore reading. In addition, I manage a multinational financial empire. However, Mom plopped down on one of my leather Italian couches. What's the lie? Why should we believe that? That I didn't succeed. I completed for her. That my potential had been squandered. I let the silence to linger, perhaps because you never bothered to examine beyond what you already thought. You anticipated seeing the unsatisfactory daughter who preferred reading over working. Dad was standing by the windows, gazing out at the city he believed to be familiar with. "This entire time," he whispered, "every single one of those businesses we've been reading about, the enigmatic purchases." "That was you," stated Drew bluntly. "Global Partners Morgan. Everyone has been attempting to figure out the competition. The market is being reshaped by the shadow empire." I grinned. "Don't you think it has a lovely ring to it? However, I like to think of it as an empire of information." I looked at my father. "After all, isn't that what you taught me? Power comes from knowledge." When he turned to look at me, I noticed something new in his eyes for the first time in my life. Respect. "The deal with Nakamura," he added slowly. "You've been preparing that for how long?" 6 months or so. Even so, I've had a majority stake in their subsidiaries for more than a year. I turned to face Drew. "Have you ever puzzled why they keep putting off your offer?" My brother's face turned white after turning crimson. You tricked me. All this time. Calmly I responded, not playing. Isn't that what you've always desired, Drew? Competing? I inquired. An opportunity to demonstrate superior commercial acumen. He erupted, but it wasn't fair. You knew insider information, covert assets, inside knowledge. I chuckled. You mean the type that your golf club friends give you. The bargains you strike in upscale resorts and on private yachts. I cautiously put down my glass. I used just brains, diligence, and a thorough comprehension of information flow to build my empire. My small library job taught me a lot that gave me an advantage you couldn't perceive. A voice said quietly, "Dinner is served." With enough tension to sever with one of my sterling silver knives, we made our way to the dining room. Mom kept looking about, as though she was trying to make sense of this place in relation to her mental picture of my existence. Dad appeared preoccupied, most likely recalculating all of his business decisions over the previous 7 years. Mom finally responded, "I guess this explains how you could afford those Louboutins," as she gazed at her immaculately laid table. I couldn't contain my laughter. "Yes, Mother, you ought to concentrate on my shoe budget." "Now what?" Drew pushed food around his plate and asked, "Will you also acquire Morgan Industries?" "I have a different proposition, actually." Sarah moved forward, holding a folder when I gave her a nod. "Drew, your business has potential. As they say in real estate, good bones. It lacks contemporary infrastructure and vision." He scowled. "What do you propose?" "A collaboration," I murmured. "The conventional side, which includes manufacturing and legacy clients, is handled by Morgan Industries. The technology and worldwide reach are provided by Morgan Worldwide Partners. We could create something much greater if we work together. Want to collaborate with me? After all?" "No," I informed him. Dad put down his fork and said, "If you can get over your ego and learn to see value in unexpected places, I want to work with the businessman you could be." To everyone's surprise, he remarked, "Julie is right. Drew, this is an opportunity to contribute to something greater than ourselves." Drew objected, "But she lied to us, made us appear foolish." Dad gave a headshake. "We made a fool of ourselves. We couldn't see success assuming a different form because we were so certain that we understood what it looked like. Your sister noticed something that we didn't. Created something we never would have thought possible." Mom used her napkin to dab at her eyes. She whispered, "All those times we felt sorry for you. Are you worried about the future?" "I understand," I responded, becoming softer. "However, perhaps it's time to put less emphasis on appearances and more emphasis on content. Isn't that the essence of true business?" The remainder of the meal was a methodical dance of reconciliations and disclosures. I described how I established my business and how the library had given me the ideal cover and, more importantly, the ideal contacts. Despite himself, Drew started to inquire in further detail about. To my amazement, Drew's initial astonishment started to give way to sincere appreciation when I explained my company plan. As I explained my idea for a possible collaboration, even he began to warm up. By dessert, his innate business instincts were finally concentrating on innovation rather than rivalry, and he was proposing methods to merge our activities. As coffee was being served, Mom remarked, "There's one thing I don't understand. Why divulge all at once? Why not simply remain hidden?" I turned to face my brother, because it is sometimes necessary to remind people that success isn't always characterized by a suit and tie. That authority doesn't necessarily flaunt itself with a corner office and a Rolex. And sometimes people need to be reminded not to judge a book by its cover, Drew said quietly. Exactly. I stood at my windows and watched the city lights later that night after my family had left. Drew with a lot to think about. Mom with a list of social events to reevaluate, and Dad with a stack of proposals to study. Sarah came over and gave me a new scotch. Well, that went more smoothly than anticipated. "Did you?" I grinned. Or did everything go according to plan? You anticipated this reaction from them. I sipped my drink and said, I knew they'd have to confront their own prejudices, their assumptions about success and worth. Whether the lesson will stick is the question. She looked at her tablet. Since the announcement, stocks have increased by 30%. The mere whispers of a possible partnership have caused your brother's business to rise by 10%. All right, let's wait a week for things to calm down before announcing the merger. Drew might be prepared to be a true partner by that point. And your parents. I recalled Mom's heartfelt apology, the proud expression on Dad's face when he saw me for the first time. They're picking up knowledge. Accepting that things don't always turn out the way you expected can be the most difficult aspect of accomplishment. I got to the library as normal the following morning. The same regulars were greeting their favorite librarian in their customary locations. Despite the fact that my face was featured in every business journal in the nation, I received no different treatment from any of them. And that might have been the biggest triumph of all. In a society that is fixated on status and appearance, I created something genuine that was valuable without the need for designer labels or approval from others. I was a librarian at the time. I still had a passion for reading. It so occurred that I was also a billionaire. After all, there are various forms of knowledge. The most powerful people are occasionally the ones you least anticipate. And that's the story. In the end, the deepest revenge isn't about getting even, it's about living better, rising above the pain, turning heartbreak into strength. Sometimes saying nothing and choosing peace speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. If you're dealing with betrayal or injustice, take a breath. Set boundaries, focus on healing. You don't have to carry the weight forever. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been betrayed, and how did you respond? Drop your story in the comments. Let's support each other. What does your version of quiet strength look like?